Good Monday morning, and thanks for listening to my musing today. I don't know if you've ever seen the cartoons that say, normally it's like a Jehovah's Witness or someone, "Have you found Jesus?" And Jesus is hiding behind the curtains. Or in the movie Forrest Gump, Lieutenant Dan asked Forrest, "Forrest, have you found Jesus?" And Forrest responds, "I didn't know I was supposed to be looking for him, sir." I think there is something that is comical about the idea that we lose or find Jesus. Yet, in the Easter story, I imagine that's a large part of the stress that the disciples were feeling. That the movement that they were a part of, the movement that was headed by Jesus, was losing steam. It was losing direction. It was losing disciples, which is what we read through Holy Week. That as they gather in Jerusalem, first Judas falls out to do what he's supposed to do. Then the disciples seem to scatter. Peter's told that he will deny the Lord 3 times. And then on the cross, at least in Matthew and Mark, we hear from the lips of Jesus on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me?" The idea that people would turn their backs on Jesus, or that Jesus would be lost to the movement, is an essential part of understanding what the fullness of Easter might be about. How do we find Jesus unless Jesus is lost in the first place? The paradox of Easter is, how do we find new life if we don't admit that death comes a-knocking one way or another, even to the most innocent, the most perfect Jesus? And so I want to think about that a little bit today. What does it mean to be forsaken? If Jesus is forsaken, does that somehow paradoxically mean that Jesus stands alongside those who are forsaken? But if Jesus stands alongside those who are forsaken, does that mean that they're forsaken? And if they're not forsaken, why do we call them forsaken in the first place? I think there is a deep mystery to Easter, a profound paradox that's hard for us to understand. But in trying to understand it, I wonder what that might have to say to us about our own feelings of being forsaken, about lost causes, and how we might be a church of lost causes, how we find hope even in the darkest circumstances, and how we understand what it means to celebrate the new life that we find in Easter, not unlike the Easter eggs that we have to hide before we go looking for them. So if you're interested in any of those things, I hope you'll stick around. So, as I said, Matthew and Mark both have Jesus saying in Aramaic, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," my God, why have you forsaken me?" That's not an original phrase to Mark and Matthew or to Jesus, necessarily. That same line comes up in Psalm 22. The psalm begins, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me, from the words of my groaning? Oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but find no rest." It's a long psalm, and that's important, because perhaps Jesus is feeling forsaken. The Easter story up to that point, especially in Mark, has all of the disciples being scattered. There's just a small smattering of the women who are there watching Jesus at the crucifixion from afar. In Mark, we even read that there, right at the end of the Garden of Gethsemane, there was one, maybe Mark, who was wrapped only in a linen cloth. And whenever Jesus is arrested, the man in the linen cloth is captured, and he leaves his linen cloth. He'd rather run away naked than be caught with Jesus. So those feelings of forsakenness don't come only in what Jesus says. We read about a small desertion, not only by Judas, who betrayed, but by all who leave him to be crucified alone. We can understand then why the sense of forsakenness, the feeling of forsakenness, might be highlighted by Jesus or by the people who are recording the crucifixion, Mark and Matthew. But maybe there's something else going on. It could be the case that in putting those words on the lips of Jesus, they're recalling not just that sense of loss and forsakenness, but they're calling out the whole of Psalm 22. Because if we flip over to look at verse 24, Psalm 22, verse 24, it reads, "For he, God, did not despise or abhor the affliction of the afflicted. He did not hide his face, but he heard when I cried to him. From you comes my praise in the great congregation. My vows I will pay before those who fear him. The poor shall eat and be satisfied. Those who seek him shall praise the Lord. May your hearts live forever." The last of the chapter says this, "To him indeed shall all who sleep in the earth bow down. Before him shall bow down all who go down to the dust, and I shall live for him. Posterity will serve him. Future generations will be told about the Lord and proclaim his deliverance to a people yet unborn, saying that he has done it." So those last lines are not only death. They're not only forsakenness. Even in those last cries, if the writers are trying to recall this psalm, God does hear the cries of the afflicted, and God ensures posterity for many generations. So that at the feeling that the Romans who crucified Jesus were the ones in charge, Jesus calls out something echoing this psalm that says God's people will live forever. That all comes from the cross, and then it is reinforced whenever the tomb is found empty and then when the resurrected Christ appears to the disciples. But that doesn't happen immediately, and that's why I've been musing about this notion of forsakenness. Reading the end of Psalm 22 feels like skipping to the last chapter of a book. That we skip over the pain, the affliction, the feeling of forsakenness that should weigh on us. That's why, within the life of the church, we take so long to get to the resurrection. That's why we spend so long in Lent being sad and dour. That Jesus dies, and that's a reality we don't want to skip over, because I find this to be incredibly important. It's not the case that the resurrection of Jesus means that Christians are immortal. We know that's not the case. Even Jesus, the perfect one, the one without sin, dies, which allegedly is the penalty for sin. So if even the innocent one must die, what does that mean for our death? It doesn't mean we circumvent death, it means we go through it. So that feeling of forsakenness is something that Christians should take the time to wrestle with. Does God leave us for a moment? Is that what death represents? Susan mentioned a few weeks ago the Elie Wiesel quote from his novel Night. Where is God in the midst of the Holocaust? Well, there is God hanging on the gallows. So Jesus brings this up for us. The existential crisis that when we die, all of us, even if we're surrounded by loved ones, somehow have to die alone. That's the risk. That's the fear. That's the feeling of forsakenness that the Bible and Jesus do not skip over. The Easter story, even though it has a happy ending, does not start off that way. In a lot of ways, the resurrection is a sort of epilogue. And Christians and Catholics, we have this unspoken debate between the crucifix, which is shown in the sanctuary, and the empty cross. One highlighting the suffering that Jesus must endure, and then the empty cross representing the victory over death. These two need to be held together, and I appreciate sometimes the way that the Lenten schedule, the Easter calendar, gives us some sort of time for that. We read the stories slowly through Holy Week. We have Silent Saturday, where somehow nothing seems to happen. There's no biblical report, there's no service, there's no sermon, there's absolutely nothing. We go from Good Friday, and then we take a pause. I suppose because it's the Lord's Sabbath. I don't really know why nothing happens on Saturday, but nothing happens on Saturday, and then we get to Resurrection Sunday, where we celebrate the risen Christ. I don't know if I've mused about this before. I probably haven't, but I do wonder, whenever I get especially biblical or especially theological, I wonder if you might be thinking, well, what in the world does this have to do with anything that is tangible to me? It can be the case, like Mr. Rogers, that it seems like I'm only talking about feelings or thoughts and nothing practical. I hope that's not the case. I hope that thinking theological helps us to know there are some tangible things that the church and the authors of the Bible have said. What does that mean for forsakenness? Are there times when we feel like causes are so far gone they're not worth pursuing anymore? For the Jesus movement, surely the death of Jesus felt like the end of whatever they had been wrapped up in, which is why in the post-resurrection accounts we see that Peter and Andrew and such are fishing. They've gone back to the life they had prior to choosing to follow Jesus. St. Jude is the patron saint of lost causes. Why is that? Well, the history goes something like, Jude is waiting to intervene for other people, but people were so afraid of praying to Judas that they never prayed to Jude. So Jude only got the most dire cases, that people in the worst straits. Because St. Jude was looking for ways to care, he often took up lost causes. In some ways, I wonder if we should think of the church as a church for lost causes. When the social safety net has too many cracks, when the holes are too big, when we don't see a way out, we don't know how we're supposed to manage certain circumstances, that's where the church of lost causes comes in. The church is for people who feel forsaken, because even Christ admitted to feelings of forsakenness. But the paradox is that if Jesus Christ felt forsaken, and yet here we are 2,000 years later still considering the stories of Jesus, considering the life of Jesus, and trying to embody that life, then hopefully those feelings of forsakenness, that's exactly what the church was made for. The church is the body of Christ that is not unheard, that is not forsaken, because God hears the cries of the afflicted. And so here we are taking on lost causes. I had to study Greek and Hebrew. Hebrew is not a spoken language. It is a lost cause, but from studying it, I've been able to think about things in literally new ways, with a new grammar and a new vocabulary, thinking about poetry in a different way, and seeing insight in the words that were used and the ways they were put together. A lost cause. For all the people who say, well, that's Greek to me. People in the church study Greek. Your pastors, Susan and Nancy and I, we've studied Greek to see what kind of insights there might be in what others might consider a very old, now unspoken Koine Greek language. How do we find value in these things that are often left? The lost coin, the lost sheep, the lost son, the lost Savior. When we are able to take the time to find them, to pursue them, we find that there's something like Easter eggs. That the point of finding an Easter egg is that inside this thing that has been lost or forgotten, we might find something valuable. And knowing that other people are going alongside us, trying to find those small nuggets of truth, or pieces of chocolate, or small coins, or whatever you put in your Easter eggs, that we do find value that starts with a sense of loss. It's only when we have a sense of loss that we can have the joy of finding something again. And those two things have to be held together. My hope is that you have not felt forsaken by the church or by others. I hope that the causes that you champion don't feel like lost causes. But in the moments when you do feel that way, whenever you do feel like a cause is lost, You can find a sense of faith knowing that Jesus has been there, Jesus has felt that, and the resurrection and the hope of Easter tells us that we don't quit, that God is a God of lost causes. God stands in solidarity with those who feel forsaken, not leaving them forsaken. At least that's the hope. So that even on the verge of death, there can still be hope in new life. I think that is the profound mystery of Easter that comes with both sorrow and with salvation. So that's what I've been musing about this week and this Eastertide a little bit. So I hope you will think about those things too. And in the moments when you might feel like a lost cause or you might feel forsaken, I hope you know that you can reach out to the church. We are a church of lost causes, and it's a joy sometimes to take them up. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next Monday.